Hello, my name is Teiuliyn and I do not consent. First of all, what is consent? Consent is simply the putting your mind into something and allowing it to happen to you or for you. Because I consent to getting inoculated. By the way, I do not. So when I refuse to consent, it means I refuse to allow something to happen for me. And consent is one of the hallmarks of this awakening of humanity, and consent begins when the human or being knows its rights, its core divine sovereign rights. And when it knows its divine sovereign rights and recognizes itself as a free being, then it knows what consent means. I have a severely autistic brother who people think that he cannot consent to anything, but he can. His higher self is the one who consents because his intellect, who knows what he thinks, but his intellect is handicapped by something. And because he doesn't speak, doesn't mean that he cannot consent. Which is funny because when someone has diminished capacity in legal terms on earth, when they cannot consent, it means that we can do whatever we want to them, which is the backwards of someone who cannot consent. And that irritates me a lot because every individual, no matter who they are and what they have, has the right free will to consent. Of course, there are some exceptions, but consent is very important in this society right now if we want to grow and evolve as individual sovereign beings as part of a collective. This is my note about consent, and recognize that those who do not have voices do have the ability to consent, and depending on their intellectual capacity as well. One time I tapped into my brother's higher self demanding if he wanted to be healed of something, and his higher self said yes. That proves to me that there is indeed a consent on some level, and a choice to consent or not consent. And I cannot imagine how much he's been through that he didn't actually consent for, that was done to him. But his higher self has consented to this experience partly anyway. And we go into complex matters here, but what's important in my message is that you have a choice, and even if you think you don't, you do, because that is the reason you are here. You consented to being on earth. The rest is up to you, and I cannot say whether you consented or not to anything. That is your and your knowledge only, and I am a free sovereign individual being that has the right to consent or not consent to whatever arises in my face. And I do not consent to tyranny, medical tyranny. I do not consent to the neurological segregation agenda, which divides people by tribes and by putting labels on them, just further separate them from society. I do not consent to inoculations. I do not consent to all of this, which is anything that it tries to impose control on humanity. Thank you for watching. I do not consent.